Okay, hi everyone. This is Jill Krentz, and I'll be introducing our judges and reading the titles of the images tonight. Our lead judge is Nancy Cox, who is a member of the Minnesota Nature Photography Club for the past 10 years, and she has also served on its board. She's been a judge for the TCA CCC Metro Clubs for the past 6 years. Her interest in photography was sparked early in the digital age and has taken her around the U.S. and abroad to numerous countries. Her interest in landscapes, especially winter, birds, macro, travel, and old rusty cars and objects. She is collaborating with John Anderson and Daryl Tangen, developing and training future judges in the art of judging in order to expand the pool from which clubs can draw for competitions like ours. Tom Moen has been a film photographer since the mid-70s and started using digital cameras over 10 years ago. 2 years ago, he was Photographer of the Year in one of the camera clubs he belongs to, and since then, he's placed in the top 2 or 3 overall. He has sold his work, and his photos are displayed at SMSU and at the Spring Break event in 2019. And in 2019, at the TCA CCC, he placed first for Contemporary Photo of the Year. In 2020, he placed second for Realistic and also received honorable mention for Color Print Awards. Many of his wildlife photos have been displayed in Germany, Russia, and the Ukraine. Steve Simmer is a natural resource professional and Minnesota-based outdoor photographer. Steve has a lifelong relationship with both Minnesota's landscapes and photography. He applies his knowledge of the natural environment to tell photographic stories. Steve's interest in photography was inspired by his father, who was a professional portrait and wedding photographer. He took the path of forestry, but after his career was complete, he found photography was still waiting for him. Over the past 7 years, he has sought training by taking workshops from established pros, in addition to extensive reading and online coursework. As an active member of the St. Paul Camera Club, he regularly submits work for judging and critiques in monthly salons and has received many awards in club and regional competitions. His work has been displayed in several galleries and is for sale in selected locations. Deanne Probst has had a camera in her hand for as long as she can remember. Indeed, she still has photos of the Badland that she shot on her Kodak Brownie as a young girl. So while she shot countless images of family, kids, friends, and nature over the years, her love for nature photography was revived several years ago, and it has become her passion. She joined the Minnesota Nature Photography Club in 2014 and served as club president for the 2018 to 19 seasons. Currently, she serves as the treasurer. Her lengthy marketing communications career includes decades of pairing images and content in multiple channels. Deanne believes that while knowing photography rules and best practices is a must, rules are also meant to be broken along the way. She believes that to figure out who you are, what's important to you, and master the techniques that help you express your vision. Deanne loves to travel to scenic sites. As well, she finds her own backyard and local patch to be fruitful sites to shoot. Her club recognized her with the Botany Image of the Year Award in 2019. In 2020, she received first place in the wildlife category and second place in botany. Deanne's images have received several acceptances in the interclub competitions of the Twin Cities Area Council of Camera Clubs. I'll turn it over now to Nancy, who's going to tell us a little bit about the judging process.
Good evening, everybody. This is Nancy here. My hair is a little longer than it was in that picture that you saw earlier, as are probably all of our hairs. I hope we all have a good evening this evening, and I wanted to take just a couple minutes and explain how this process has happened for us. As in my bio that Jill kindly read, John Anderson, Daryl Tangen, and I have developed and have had one class of students because of the need that has really been voiced for some time to have more judges, a bigger judging pool to call upon. And so we developed it and gave a class in February. The three people that will be doing the judging this evening were in that class. We were intending to do another class the end of April into mid-May, and obviously things changed, and we will put that on hold for now. But when I put out the call after having Terry ask me to do judging for this, I put out the call as a mentor to our new judges. I wanted to see if there were folks that would step up and want to do this experiment here with me. And these three folks, Tom and Steve and Deanne, jumped at the opportunity, and we spent approximately 5 hours on Zoom doing work on Josie, and I see you nodding. We spent quite a bit of time really talking through the process of how we'll do this, working on each of the images that had been submitted, and doing the scoring for these. They then took that back and did their work on preparing for this evening. And they are well prepared, and I'm really thrilled to be working with these folks on this process. So, though I've had some input along the way and feedback for them, they are doing the judging. It is their maiden voyage here, and I am going to actually sit back and listen to their judging here tonight, and they have really worked hard and have prepared for this adventure here this evening. So without further ado, we will move into the judging process, and Jill will take it away from here. And thank you both, Jill and Terry. I'm just giving a shout out to both of you as well for your hard work and working with us and coordinating this and so forth. And like kind of, don't take this wrong, but baby chicks, go out into the world and do your judging. And I'm really proud of all three of you. So here we go. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Nancy. Our first category is the assignment category, and we will start with the 5s. The title of this image is Wild River.
I like to mention also to thank you, Nancy, and the club for giving the opportunity to judge tonight, as being our first time. We'll be a little bit nervous, I think. One of the things that, as a judge, I look for is focal point. I look at rules. I look at uniqueness, interest, as well as technical. And as a judge, we sometimes see what artists envision in their look of their work. I believe that this artist is expressing a theme or mood when processing this photo. There are good points to the photo being relatively sharp, and at nearing sunset, in the distance, the road actually points to their assignment, which is the golden hour. There are a few things that distracted me over the overall selection, and that is the color purple. The sun was setting in the background, but there was a streak on the lower right side of the photo. It could have possibly been from a headlamp of a car. The photo, in my opinion, just didn't invoke enough interest to wander and explore further. Next. Thank you.
This image is titled Backlit House Wren. It's okay, I should have announced. I will announce the title of each image so that then you'll know to go.
Thank you. You're a tough judge for wrens. They're in my yard, and I take dozens of pictures of them every year that I've been here in this location. This is a clean backlit shot of a wren on a tree. Very good composition, placement of subject, and it kept my interest. The assignment was for the golden hour. The Wren's backlit outline wouldn't lead me to think that there should really be a little bit more gold rather than white, and as far as the outline is concerned. Also, I'm not sure how the purple came into the bird's feathering. I'd also like to see more texture in the feathers that are exposed. Next.
The next image is entitled Golden Glow.
The swan's beautiful and majestic in flight as well as swimming, as these two are. It appears on closer observation to be a mirror image of one swan, however. Because of the stark white sunlight on the necks and head, it represents the assignment topic, but I think it's more of in the creative area. It was very well done. The sun striking the neck repeated on the mirror on both of the swans was in sync. Next.
Remnants of the Past.
A couple of weeks ago, I learned what those square holes were on the grain elevator in the silo. So when I saw it, I had a good memory of discovery. It's a very old silo indeed. The rock construction gave the picture interest as well as the focal point. I was concerned when the trees in the background were a little bit overbearing to the actual image. To me, they were competing with my attention of the silo. It would have been better to maybe taken a shorter lens and maybe move the trees further back in the picture and away from the main subject, if that was possible at the time. Next.
Sand Island at sunset.
I think I would like to be in that canoe right now, if they're in a canoe. By the looks of the island, it's covered in trees with no area for camping. There's a reason why you took this photo. A good memory, perhaps. The sun was setting, captured in the rock formations. There's a lot of green in the photo and may be a tad too much. As an observer, I did not define focal point in this photograph. It looks like the sharpest area in the photo could possibly be a few feet in front of the photographer in the water. Unfortunately, the photograph is not level, which is so very important when submitting. Next.
Sunset on the Chippewa River.
The photographer caught the mood of the purple of the sun setting, a time when colors are fading into the grays and black and white. Movement was captured in the flowing of the water. The first thing I looked for in the photo is the focal point. I thought it was a sky, but then I looked at the left and there were the buildings. They took away my interest in the sky. I couldn't determine what was the actual focal point in this image. I believe if you experiment with cropping, there might be a new perspective that it might show you. But I think the left-hand side was way too busy. Next.
Superior Frolics.
Superior Frolics. This is a memorable family photograph at Minnesota's biggest lake. The horizon was level. Topic of brothers and sisters playing is interesting to me. I also believe the artist's focal point was the children. If so, I would like to have seen more of the child's faces versus side views. To me, I didn't see the golden hour assignment in the children, nor the overall photo. Next.
Sevens. The first photo is Astrid.
Holy cow. I was attracted to this cow by its left eye and nostril. It did fill the assignment of golden hour and the cow's head was backlit in gold. Good for you. I didn't take off that the landscape was not level because the cow's head was turned to me. I passed on that technically. It was a very difficult photo to take. Should more than one eye be in focus? Should the tongue or the entire head? I would like not to have left the left ear cut off, nor the chin. I also like to see a bit more of the body. Next.
Dead Horse Arch.
I like this picture for the overall scene. The colors were true to the nature and the assignment was met. Where the difficulty was the point of interest. Is it the far butte, or was it a closer butte, or the river meandering, or simply as the rock frame above your head? This photo would have been accepted if there was a direct link to the point of interest. With some additional burning and dodging of shadows and maybe adjusting the crop angle a bit, this would have been accepted. Burning, dodging, making things darker in areas and lighter in others. Next.
Early morning at Split Rock.
Boy, one of the most iconic images in Minnesota. As a judge, you judge a photo on its merits, not on the other photos of the same image that you've seen over the years. The photographer clearly met the assignment. The image was perfectly level horizon. I would suggest one of two things. Either bringing down the exposure on the lighthouse and rocks and put them in silhouette, or possibly increasing their visibility. To me, I think you increase their visibility that the cliff structure and rock texture needs to be explored more. See what happens if you mask that area and bring it out more, and then what it looks like with less. I believe you're almost there. Next.
Golden Hour Canyon.
What a marvelous scene. A rock canyon passage, a cloudy sunset crowning the edge of the canyon, and a flock of birds traveling overhead, all within the same shot. It met the assignment. As a viewer of the photo, I had difficulty determining which object was the focal point. Was it the canyon, the sun, or the birds? The brightest part of the picture captures your eyes, which is the sun in this photo. The Red Canyon competes for your attention and becomes to me the dominating part of the image. Next.
Green-winged teal.
I like the action in this duck photo. So often we see one or two swimming around, and good for you that you selected an action photo. The feather was sharp throughout. It had space all around the duck, which was correct in all aspects, and lighting was good. As an observer, I couldn't tell from the picture itself if it was taken in the golden hours to meet the assignment. Because of this, it may have been accepted. Next.
Loon at sunset.
The way you made the water look like molten metal was cool. The subject is wonderful. The close-up and sharpness is right on. Technically, certain images need space in front and behind of the subjects. This photo needed a little bit more behind the bird. In front, there was the right amount. A couple of things that I would like to have seen: more detail in the face. The loon was being backlit, and wildlife photographers need to see more features in the face. Through post-processing, it seems that the bird's white feathers changed their color to green, purple, and blue. With a little inverted masking in Lightroom, you may have had isolated the bird from the water to bring more out in the face and kept the feathers natural. Next.
Summer at the lake.
Overall, this is a wonderful picture that tells a good story. I like the cloud formation. I like the fishers coming in the morning. Maybe they're wanting to beat that oncoming storm that's coming in, or maybe it's at night. The green woodland is crisp. The focal area is a shack and to its left. The boat and its occupants are in a shadow, but just a few feet off the right is a bright spot in the water. This may be because the artist wanted to make sure the focus point was elsewhere. Next.
Tousled bedbeard.
The beard was the focal point of this photo. It was not burnt out, but sharp and well balanced in color and vibrancy. The background was hidden in shadows, so the subject stood out. The eyes hit on top third of the photo. The photo met those criteria and the assignment of the golden hour. There are a few items that I would like to have seen, and one of them was more of an animal. I might have removed some of the bright green over the shoulder of the animal, tone that down just a bit. Next.
Eights. Now on the eights, I will read the title and the maker name. This one is Cape Cod Lighthouse, Richard Hudson.
What a nice, unique lighthouse. It must be pointing out to the sea, looking at the window halfway up to the tower. The basking of the morning sun lights up the face as well as the house. The clouds give the image lots of impact and interest. The scrub brush coloring is right for that time of the day. Do not oversaturate the photo. The blues in the sky are correct. Technically, it was sharp and in focus. This also met the assignment. Next.
Cash up at sunset, Jay Olson.
Overall, this photo hit the mark on what I like in a photo. Focal point, the grain elevator, rules of third, uniqueness of the area, draws my interest to keep me looking for more. And technically, it is very sharp. It gives a mellow moodiness in the play with colors. I'm concerned with the highlighted spot in the center. If the grain elevator was the focal point of interest, then that area may have been a little bit more exposed. Next.
Garrapatta State Beach, Ken Wolter.
Ken, I was at this spot in September when my stepson got married. I took dozens of pictures, but I like how you captured this entire scene. The assignment was met. The golden hour was on hand. Your focal point to me are the cliffs. It drew my interest to look further into the photo and see the sky and the sea. The picture is soft, but that doesn't detract from its interest. To me, there's a bit too much of saturation, but it's acceptable. I might back it off a smidgen in the future. I also want the artist to be aware of the blue transitions in the sky. That transitions of blues may have been caused by a polarizer filter, possibly. Next.
Turret Arch by Carl Wegner.
Someday, I'm going to get out west to photograph some of these remarkable landscapes. This is one of them. Unmistakably, the focal point is the rock formation. It is a sunrise, and the shadows are where they should be. The gold color is highlighted as it should. I don't know if the photographer used a tripod, but I'd like to have seen more depth of field with a longer exposure. The blank open sky doesn't detract because the subject matter is unmistakably right out in front. One cue, you should consider removing the white line that traces the rock edge or adjust your slider values a bit. Next.
Highway 9. These are the 9s, I'm sorry. I will again name them. Go back one, please. Okay. Golden Grouse by Marge Springett.
Okay, golden grouse. I photographed hundreds of grouse over the years. This is an excellent one in action. Caught the sun in their eye, good framing, sharp look with the morning dewdrops on the grass. Good contrast to separate the focus point from the background. It hit assignment in the golden hour. I gave this photo a 9. I think that I might have given it a 10 if you'd raised the exposure just a bit on the crown of the head. Next.
Highway 95 by Mike Schrun.
How many of us have traveled this road and never saw an image of this beauty in front of us? To stop, pull off the road, and witness it was inspirational. The photo hit all the marks and focus throughout, uniqueness, kept my interest with the road coming in and out and moving through the entire image. Technically, great use of color and mood. There's a little gray image on the top left that needs to be removed. I played around with it. If I might suggest, I play around a little bit with the top third of the image to see if you could create a little bit more drama in the sky and treetops.
Tens. Sunset, Steve Clocker.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm standing on the boat right now. I originally gave it a 9, but after looking at it more closely and seeing the distant sea edge, sunset, clouds, reflections of the fiberglass boat structure, the focal point of the sun, and the use of the light uniqueness that this invokes, and where it was shot was taken from, generally, the overall interest, I gave it a 10. Next.
Sunset Swing Set, Jill Krentz.
Jill, this photo drew my interest over and over again. What a remarkable capture. The play on color of the end of the growing season with the leaves sparkling, the green lawn, cornfields that are gold budding up to the yard. Excellent rainbow in the background. To me, it appeared to pushes its light to the tree on the left, highlighting its golden leaves. I like the way you frame the image on the top with the tree branches. If there's one thing to maybe change, is to highlight more behind the yellow slide. I think that with your name of the photo, that needs to be that part needs to be brought out a bit more. Congratulations.
Creative category. 6s. Flowers.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Kind of like a nice introduction. In photography, there are several things that I also value a great deal, not one necessarily more than the other, and that is composition, storytelling, technical skills such as exposure and white balance and all the things that go into making the whole picture, sharpness where it counts, and the use of lighting in particular, which can be creative and factual and a little bit of everything, but all those things combine to me to kind of keep me in the picture and bring me back again and again. And those are the things by which I measured my images. We're looking at flowers. This is a nice use of this reflective technique that's not an easy one to achieve. So kudos for the sharp flowers in those droplets and the horizontal crop that really suits the subject. Your intended subjects are sharp where it's important. That sharpness contrasts strongly with the fair amount of noise in the background and the stem. And I believe you'll find this to be a stronger image if you can reduce that noise and keep your viewer on the droplet images. Next image, please.
Follow me.
Such nice calming colors in this image of a great egret. It creatively uses processing techniques that create a visual interest, which is so important. The composition and use of a focal point also are important, of course. And for me, that second image is pulling my eye away from what I see as the primary one in the foreground. So I'm really not sure where the creator wants my eye to land. I suggest revisiting the image, playing a little bit further with your post-processing choices to reveal your creative vision.
Puddle reflections.
This image is a great reminder that we should always remember to look up and down and around to see new perspectives. I'm glad the photographer did this and used black and white to portray a natural scene that's not naturally pristine. Nature can be kind of messy, and we have to look hard to see what it is we want to say. So in creative images, it's good to know where the photographer wants us to look in a busy scene like this with so many sharp and blurry elements in it. I found that a bit challenging given the tilt and the scattering of the focus in soft areas. So I suggest revisiting it to level it and suggest an element you really want to emphasize.
7s. Here.
My eye rests easily in this image. I like the soft toned colors and the soft effect, yet I can see the textures and the light. So that's a nice salute to the processing of this. I also like the matched angles of the chair seat and the umbrella, that slight tilt. Again, I'm not sure what the focal point is. Do you want me to look at that bright wall where my eye goes to the bright piece versus the chair or the umbrella? Not sure where you want my eye to settle. And I think this will be a stronger image if there's a little bit more space added at the top and the bottom to give my eye a little bit more room to move around.
And now the 8s. Fair Time by Troy Schmidt.
This is a sweet shot. I feel like I'm standing right in the midway and I can smell the caramel apple. Too bad we can't do that this year, right? This is a really nice blend of movement and a static setting, and the light is treated very well. It's a good exposure, the white balance, and the wide angle adds a lot of energy to the picture. I think it's a great choice of a lens. So I think it's a nice capture of a familiar scene, but with a twist.
Last Gasp, Pat Chaconis.
This is an interesting still life image, not something we see very often. The low key, that dark background really emphasizes that rose color. I like the creative vision for this image very much. I noted that the vertical vase draws my eye upward to the blurry blooms, while the image's name of Last Gasp tells me you want me to look at that drooping, sharp flower that's rather tight on the on the right side. So I suggest playing a little bit more with some dodging and burning to direct your viewer's eyes to the focal point you wish, and that tells that last gasp story.
9s. Golden Eye in Snow, Marianne Jerks.
I was very taken with this image. It's a sharp action shot of a lovely golden eye. That creative use of the effects and the color made me see those snowflakes almost as stars sprinkled around this beautiful bird. I like the use of textures and that color vignette to really frame the subject and bring me back again and again to the bird. I think if you crop a bit off the bottom, you'll find that it's an even stronger image. Nice job.
Tricolored Heron with Lunch, Don Specht.
This is an impactful image with a wow factor. It has great colors. It's a strong and balanced crop and a sharp action scene. The water looks especially nice, I should say, with this treatment. I was really taken with that soft, and yet you can still see the ripples in it. To keep our eyes on the scene, the only recommendation I would make would be to consider editing that brighter water in the bottom right corner, because it's drawing my eye away from the image and out of the frame. When I really want to kind of circle back to that angle of the body and the fish, back to the legs, back to the body, to the fish, and not be taken off frame. Nice job.
Now the nature category. Our first photo is a 6s and Monkey Zoo Business.
My first comment was like, that is really a face. Those eyes are just imploring me for something, trying to engage me to do something, save it, feed it, not sure which. I like the position of the subject in the image. I think the crop is very nice. And the angle of the zoo is also, of the monkey in the zoo is also just right for the, it's not static, it's got some energy because it's tilted. I do see what I believe is some excessive sharpening or post-processing work that has caused some really strong sharpness and blurring issues that detract from the image. So I would suggest revisiting the processing to dial back some of that sharpening and see if you like it more.
Vegan Moose.
Well, it is always nice to get a moose. I would love to get that shot. It's a nice action photo with the water spray. Too bad we can't always order up the optimal light for these kinds of shots. We get them when we see them. And that comes back to the topic of light. It looks like perhaps it's a midday light, which can cause really tough highlights and shadows. If it were me, I'd reprocess it with a bit tighter crop to keep my eye on this magnificent moose, and then bring up the shadows to even out the lighting on him. And I think we'll enjoy that closer look even more.
Winter Grouse.
This is a fun little bird moving along the snow. I can't see a lot of that snow, but clearly it looks by the title that it is a winter scene, of course. The exposure of the feathers is nice and very balanced. I'm not sure, but it looks like the background may have been highlighted for that high key effect, which perhaps rendered the soft edges around the grouse and left him without much visible ground to walk on. He's just sort of floating without grounding. So I suggest revisiting your processing on this one to strengthen the edges of the bird against the snow, and maybe bring out a little bit more detail where those feet are touching so that they are foundationed, if you will, somewhere. And then I think you're going to be happy with those results.
And the 7s. Black-backed Woodpecker.
This is a beautiful bird in its environment. I saw this myself this year up at Saxon this winter, so I appreciate the beauty and rareness of this bird. It's a great find for birders and photogs. The bird's details are visible here, which isn't easy when you're dealing with a subject that's very black. While the bird is a beauty, my eye is drawn away to that bright hot red on the right side, which could either be toned down considerably or really just cropped away to keep the focus on the bird that is the subject of the picture and the name. I think it's stronger image if you keep that focus to the bird, and also work to reduce some of the halos that formed around the bird, perhaps in processing and reducing some of the noise in the background. And I think you have a beautiful portrait.
Owlet.
It's so fun to see owlets in their environment, especially when they're camouflaged as well as they are. You caught a really sweet view here. Feathers and fur can be challenging for sharpness, and this appears to be an issue throughout the image. I see what I believe is some over sharpening of the bright eyes and the beak, so that it's not as natural looking as the surrounding elements of the bird and the moss and the tree. The busy background with that vertical branch and the leaves also competes with the cute critter.
Smile.
Eagles are always a welcome sight, and this is a nicely sharp image that shows great eye contact with all of us who view it. There's an inherent challenge with birds, with eagles and egrets and other birds whose white feathers reflect the light while the dark feathers absorb it. And in this case, they're nice and sharp dark feathers, but the brightness of that white really caused some blown out highlights in the forehead of the bird and also in the tail area, and also some noise due to that. So see if you can recover some more detail in those white areas, and I think you'll have a stronger image.
Sun goose gazing.
Kind of back to that idea of exposure of white. This is a bright, sharp image of two swans snuggled up on cold ice. The sharp image is nicely exposed to show that feather detail in both the light and shadowed portions, particularly on the tail of the one on the right. In my opinion, the composition leads me to bounce between both birds. Like, which one do you want me to see? And unfortunately, I can't see the eye in the one to the left. So I kind of revisit this maybe and see if you can pull out some of the detail in that black beak, and maybe the eye will also be more visible that way. I'd also add a little bit of space at the bottom if it's in your original image, so that the backside of that bird isn't quite sitting on the bottom of your frame.
And now the eights. So I'll read the photographer name. Banff, Steve Plocker.
This is a lovely landscape of Banff. Haven't been there, hope to go. It's a peaceful image that really grew on me the more I viewed it. I really like the V of the river in the image. That kind of convergence of those two lines leads me right to an interesting point that's visible and not blocked by the trees. It's a nice choice of lens there because it also is a compressed image, and I like it, and given that it's very sharp. It may have been taken in the middle of the day or some bright light, which renders some flatness to the picture. So I think it will be a bit stronger with some selective dodging and burning to enhance the dimensions of the picture. And then it's a little deceptive, can't quite tell if it's level or not. It appears to be, but then again, the tree line might be tipping my eye to the side. So I would revisit the lighting and exposure, and I think you'll have a pretty impactful image.
Lacy wings. Melissa Anderson.
I just love the colors in this image of the female cardinal. They're just, the color tones are shared by the bird and the background, so they really blend beautifully together. The bird is sharp with just a touch of softness where it works in those wings. The grass and branch are also nice leading lines that bring me up to the bird. I think it would be a little stronger image with some cropping of a bit of that empty space on the left side and some of those extra grasses, if you will, on the right side, to keep my eye right on the bird and let that stem bring me right up to that nice sharp face.
Nines. Descending Swan. Larry Weinman.
This is a sweet action shot of a trumpeter swan. I was struck by the great exposure of the bird in that warm light against the soft blue background. Nice separation of tones in what could have been a more blended, muddier view. That the swan is looking right at us with a sweet catch light in its eye, and the shutter speed catches a touch of movement in those wings. My only suggestion for this lovely picture would be to crop along the bottom a bit, and also be sure it's level, and that can be tricky when you have a curved shoreline. But overall, this is just a lovely image of a descending swan.
Evergreen Aurora. Michael Harum.
This is a super impactful image to me, something too few of us will ever see. I'm super fine with the centering of those pines, which have great detail and shadow treatment that lets us see the snow on the branches and yet doesn't overpower that beautiful background. My only suggestion to make it perhaps a little bit stronger is to crop a bit along the bottom to allow those vertical pines to keep me moving toward that stunning sky.
Great White Heron, Kathy Lauer.
I think this is a beautiful capture of what I believe might actually be a snowy egret. It's a peaceful scene and it's a nice action shot. It's very pleasing tones, nice exposure of the white feathers with that soft gray background. There's no blurring of the two. They just each stand nicely on their own. It also appears to break that rule of the level that I've talked about before, but maybe not because of the waves and the photographer's vantage point. The only thing I would suggest, if it were me, I would try pulling down that dark vignette a bit and cropping it in on the right side for greater focus on this very lovely bird.
Hoarfrost Tree, Larry Weinman.
I'd love to get this shot of a high key image of a hoarfrost tree, and that gorgeous hoarfrost is so nicely detailed. The exposure and contrast work really well. It shares the scene's details with us, and I especially like the grasses at the tree base that really ground the image. You have a sense that it's not floating, it's anchored somewhere. My only suggestion, and the only one, is to revisit the original and see if you've got a little bit more space at the bottom of the image because it's cropped rather tightly, and that would balance some of that perfect spacing at the top. A lovely picture.
Stars Over Poplar Lake by Terry Butler.
Seeing this scene, tried to photograph it this nicely, and I failed. I love it. It's a beautiful light show. It's a good black, solid black silhouette, and that strong blue is just so pleasing to the eye. The stars are sharp, and I see no trailing of the stars, so your long exposure was just right. Not an easy thing to do. It's a lovely reflective scene that's nicely done.
And now the tens. Female bluebird begging for food, Don Specht.
Love it all. It's a wow factor image. It's sharp where it needs to be. It's a great true story. It has a beautiful treatment of the background, that lovely rich green. Birds are in their environment. I think it has all the elements of a very engaging image, which is criteria for success. And I can almost hear that baby begging for its dinner. Lovely picture.
And now we're on to the pictorial category. The first image will be the sixes, body art.
Okay, thank you. And thanks again for the opportunity to practice judging. I think everybody's talked a little bit about their system. Part of that training that we get is we're encouraged to look at all of the factors that we think make a great picture and try to pick the ones that are most relevant to us. Everybody's a little different in what they consider important in a photograph, which I think is both the good and the bad of judging, because depending on who's judging, some pictures can get scores that are a little different than others. Although as we were going through our own photos as the group, we found out that there isn't a whole lot of range, really. If it's a great picture, it's a great picture, and most people are going to recognize that pretty readily. So one of the things I start with is concept, the impact, interest, emotion, relationships. That really needs to be there. So does a clear subject with a good center of interest, and a clear story is always helpful. If you have to ask yourself, what is this picture about? It can be technically perfect, but maybe it's not a compelling picture. And creativity, looking at things from a different point of view, using imagination and trying to take something very familiar and make it new. So those are, to me, the top things that are important in evaluating a photo. Then there's the technical stuff, the exposure, sharpness, composition, shutter speed, depth of field, all that. And that's all very important stuff. But mostly, if you get that right, it's only going to matter if if there's something wrong with it. You're not going to gain any extra points for having a technically perfect picture. It's really in the creativity and the quality of the subject itself that counts for me anyway. So starting with the pictorials, excuse me, I've got some notes here too I'm going to be peeking at just to make sure I do every one of these images justice. In this case, we've got a subject that is nicely lit, well exposed, sharp, and attractive. That's a great story right there. And the title I like with body art. Sure illustrates what to look for in the image. One thing I do see is some serious digital artifacts. And, this is one of those technical things that can detract from an otherwise fine picture. If you look at the top of the image, there's some narrow branches in there that all have pretty severe digital distortion around them. I don't know what you'd call that and how it got there. It's a little more than chromatic aberration, I think. But if you can clean that up, then you have a really much better picture. And as a composition suggestion, since the theme is body art, I did notice that that her left arm is a little bit diminished. It's not quite front and center. You might expect that to be a little more prominent in the photo, and just a little bit of an edge cut off that elbow too. So very good material here though, and generally a nicely done photograph. Next.
Boy with ball.
This is a really cute kid. And the story, I think, is, does he need help getting that ball out of the water? I like that concept. One thing I noticed is that, or that I'm looking for, is that it seems like there's an interaction or some action that he is referring to, but it's out of the frame. And it feels just to me like a part of that story might be missing. Also, monochrome is a nice touch, but this is a little flat. And by flat, I mean it lacks the contrast, the dark darks and the bright brights. In monochrome, you want to try to get as full a range of tones as you can. And on a cloudy day, for example, that can take a little work to get to that point in post-processing. Next.
Fire in the sky.
Well, this is a classic view of downtown Minneapolis with a nice sunset sky, great colors, very nice composition. Because it is not sharp, it gets knocked out of the acceptance. These kinds of pictures with all that tiny detail and looking at those windows, and if everything isn't tack sharp from front to back, on close examination, it just doesn't hold up. But wow, what a nice evening that must have been, and like I say, very well exposed and composed. Next.
Waiting for spring.
I think this is a good photo. It's a white bike on white snow, and that requires some skill to get to that point of not losing everything in the brightness of the snow, or having it get lost in the background. That said, it is a stand-up shot of a bike in the snow, and that frankly is not all that interesting by itself. I know that waiting for spring is the concept, and I think somehow the photo needs to say a little more about that. Maybe playing with, if I was going to do this again, if you were going to do this again, maybe playing with angles, emphasizing details, maybe creating a stronger photo by getting down and just trying to make the bike itself more interesting. Next.
Willow River.
Well, it's a nice picture of the river on a nice late winter day, maybe it looks like. Things are starting to melt a bit. It needs something, though. It's just the river itself, and the reflections in the river is, here again, is there a compelling story here? Are there some interesting river structures or something that really draws the eye and gives me some place to rest while I go and explore the rest of the scene? In this case, the park bench would be a candidate, but I think it's a little too small in the frame to do that. And possibly cropping in from the upper left of the frame would bring the river a little bit over to the side and bring it a little closer to that bench. But I don't think it's probably close enough to do what you'd need it to do. But just look for that in the future of as nice as the river can be. You need a place to start your eye moving through it, and a little bit of a story to say, this is why I thought this place was interesting. Next.
And now the sevens. Cattle pasture.
Well, this is a very interesting looking cow. In fact, she looks like she's having a bad day. The weather's getting to her. It's wet, it's cloudy and cool, and she's just looking for something to engage with here. To be engaging, though, I would like to see the cow larger in the frame. I mean, it's really about just that one cow, and everything else in that picture doesn't really add much to the story of that. If you want to see what's going on in this cow's head, the mood maybe of the animal itself, you might want a better view of the eyes, a little more of a close-up to try to pull some expression out of this cow rather than just having a cow standing stationary in a field. Next.
Ely Fire Station.
Well, these are definitely interesting lamps, and the photo is well made. For me, anyway, on their own, I don't feel like they make a compelling story. The red doors do give away something of offering a clue about what kind of a building this might be, that it is a fire station. But I guess I'm looking for more. And so, like I say, well made and interesting. But even those lamps, as interesting as they are, you show three of them and you're not really close enough for one of them to really dominate the picture. It just, in my view, doesn't reach that level of being a compelling picture.
Grand Marais.
Well, Lake Superior is known to put on a show, and this is a great place to view it. You have a spectacular wave break and, the classic little harbor beacon just about to get swamped by that wave. But this is also a very bright day. And I find that as I look at this, my eye really has to push through that bright, bright foreground. I know it could be attractive on its own, but really, that the most interesting part of this picture is where that wave is breaking over the wall. So I think photographing that or cropping it so that there's less foreground and a lot more subject, which is the lighthouse and the wave, would really make it a great picture. Next.
Kiss in concert.
Those guys still playing? I thought they were all in nursing homes by now, but from the looks of this, they do put on a great show. They still got the chops, I guess. And it's a great concert shot. It's a great memory too. You must have had to been right up there. And, with the fireworks and all that, there's action. But I think to be really, so like I say, it's a good memory shot, but to be a competitive shot, you're really looking for something closer up, something with eyeballs, something where you can catch the emotion of the moment in one of the musicians. That's where you really can convey the impact and the presence of these musicians. And I know being there with all the noise and the lights, it feels like a powerful presence, but when you take it in a picture and include all that stuff, the eye really doesn't know where to go to find that emotion. And so you really have to bring that closer. Next.
Kishi Sunset.
And speaking of bringing it closer, here again, another great picture. There's wonderful light and a very interesting subject. I actually looked this old wooden church up because I wanted to get a closer look at it. And so I see a couple of issues here. The photo is, technically, it's quite grainy. And I don't know if that's due to noise or cropping, but it's not, the sky is grainy and the church is not really sharp enough. I think if you could, and I know you're probably out on a boat and you don't have a lot of control over how close you can get to this thing, but if you manage to get closer and it takes up more of the frame, it would sure increase interest a lot. Next.
Salton Sea Swing.
Yeah, I like to see these photos from different places because it forces me to sometimes look them up and see, well, where is this and why is this a place people go to take pictures? And this is really a very popular and interesting spot. And it's a nice photo with the Bunny Club logo showing on the swing. It's well positioned in the picture. But as with so many travel photos, you get what you get when you show up there sometimes. If you're on a tour, if you're just passing through an area for the day, you might not be able to hang around for that perfect weather and perfect light. So I think that was a bit of a disadvantage here. The only thing I can think of that might have made this into a compelling image is to have find a bunny that would go sit on that swing and provide a little eye candy, because otherwise the stationary swing, stationary water, and heavy air really doesn't hold me. Next.
Facts.
Well, this is a familiar Lake Superior North Shore site, and it really nicely illustrates the struggle of surviving here in days gone by, when small fishermen went out in their boats and fished in the lake, maybe even before there were motors, or when the motors were pretty primitive. You've also caught a nice wave break here coming right in, and I think the whole scene could gain some more power with just a slight crop from the top and the left to cut off that power pole, lower the sky a little bit, and make that really nice wave in there, kind of the front and center, the attention getter and the thing that leads you through the rest of the picture. Nicely exposed, by the way, too.
Vermilion Lake.
Here's another well-made photograph. Yeah, I like the light, and the water is very clear near the shore. But with a clear blue sky, you know, for strong attention grabber, you really have to look to the foreground. Every photographer loves to get an interesting sky, but you can't always get that when you're there, so you do the best you can. And as far as sharpness and exposure, you know, all that is, and composition, all that is well handled. However, when I look at the foreground, that one element, the one that I want to lead me in there, is competing with another one. You took advantage of those rocks on the right or the log on the left and just picked one and used that to pull you into the image. It would be a lot stronger image. But as it is, technically well done. Next.
And now the eights. BMX Polar Plunge, Fred Sabatka.
You know, in photography, they always talk about the decisive moment, and this is definitely it. Very well captured, nicely exposed. Frankly, I can't wait to see what happens next. The thing I would recommend for improving it would be to maybe, if that frame was, you move your camera a little bit to the left. Now, I know in the heat of the moment, that's really difficult to do. But it would seem maybe to show something about where that biker came from. Where's the ramp that he jumped off of, and kind of put more of the action right in the middle. Because I think this guy standing under the arch there with his, on the microphone with his hand in the air, is almost the first thing you noticed, and then you see the biker. And so putting the biker more in the middle and him off to the side, I think would have helped the composition. Next.
Don Call, Jill Krentz.
So this would be a story about the bird calling at dawn. And it is a very nice mood. I like the subject, which is the bird, although it's a little small in the frame. I like the fog and the light. It's a little bit distracting that those leaves on the branches in front of the picture are the sharpest thing in the picture. And then the sharpness kind of falls off by the time you get out to the bird, which probably should be the subject. So I think as much of a pleasant mood as this is, I think to be a higher scoring picture, I'd like to see less of those leaves, or maybe have them out of focus and have that bird be much bigger in the frame. Next.
Not again, Willie Gorham.
Yeah, this one made me laugh because the first thing I noticed was the look on that dog's eyes that said, uh-oh, this isn't what it was supposed to happen here. And it's a really fun shot of a ski joring race mishap. And I love that moment. I think it would be stronger if in my opinion, if it was a little less detail in the top of the picture, the windows and the vertical lines and the audience along the rail there that's all looking someplace else takes away from this subject. If the subject at the top was a little lowered, maybe the subject was a little larger, and the dog was really the main point of the picture anyway, it could be stronger. Next.
Terry Butler.
Well, there is an awful lot to like about this scene. I have been to this Oregon coast, but not to this particular spot, and not with a camera that was worth anything. That was some years ago. As far as exposure, shutter speed, the water action in the sky, it's all very nice. Composition-wise and emotionally, I think, in my opinion, the foreground almost looks like a zone apart from the wild sea beyond. And what I was looking for here is a connection between the two. It's almost like two pictures. You start with one in the foreground, and then you look beyond it and see what's going on out in the sea. Not a bad thing, but just my personal taste would be that I'd like to see a little less foreground and have that action a little bit closer. Or in some pictures I've seen where the tide is coming in and you've got flow coming in or going out to the sea. But that foreground is just pretty placid compared to what is out there beyond. Next.
Sunflower by Rebecca Van Dyke.
Well, I would say, it's a bold choice to take a sunflower in black and white because that's, the yellow color is what it's all about in most cases. But this one is sharp, it's perfectly exposed, and I was impressed that I could see the subtle textures and tones in the petals, and it's a very nice still life. Next.
Now the nines. Winter Magic, Jill Krentz.
Well, in this one, the first thing, of course, the barn is a really interesting subject. Just an old barn sitting in the snowfield. There's a lot of little details to look at on that are kind of fun. And that holds a picture on its own. In this case, it's only the foreground for the frosted forest behind it, which is even more interesting. And add a few dried flower stalks in the foreground just to kind of lead you into the picture. And it's really, it has depth, it has interest, and some rare weather conditions. It's a great photo.
Tens. Predator and Prey, Mary Ann Jerks.
One of the things I did here first, before I do any scoring or any comments, I just click through all the pictures that I've got to look at. And there's always a few that just stand out, and this was one of them. I first thought I looked at those three ducks scooting along under this eagle, and one of them, they're thinking, oh man, this is going to hurt. It was really a dramatic and decisive moment in the world of survival. And the eagle is just so sharp that and so focused. It's hard. I think he's going for the lead duck, but it's hard to say, but it is so well done. There's really nothing I can say that would improve that. Next.
Snow Twins by Kelly Perry.
Yeah, here's another one. Totally different mood, but and of course, cute kids, that's always an easy mark for me. But when it's done right, then they're really cute. And this one has got so much to like in it. The expressions on their faces, they're making eye contact. They got that ruddy complexion that they didn't just get dressed up and put outside for this picture. They've been out here playing for a while. And then the idea of propping up their favorite stuffed animals next to them like their little buddies, I just think it's a very endearing picture, a great emotional story here. And the subjects fill the frame just as they should. Well done. That's it.
Thank you very much to all of our judges.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much for walking it through with us, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to have this be a good, experience for these new judges. So keep an eye out for them in the future, and thanks, guys. You did well, so appreciate it.
Well, all three of the judges, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.